we are at a crossroads, and I think this is the moment to choose. Do you want to do what's right, or do what kind of is coming from some political and, financial gain that's really still not going to be putting the money back into farmers' pockets?
Welcome back to another episode of the Force of Nature podcast. Today's special guest is none other than Nicole Masters from Integrity Soils. Nicole is an agroecologist from New Zealand, but is now based in Montana. In today's episode, we discuss how Nicole came to create Integrity Soils, what her passion is behind working with people, and we discuss in depth the Create program, which I've just completed, and how it has changed my life and many others. So without further ado, let's get into it. Nicole, how are you today?
Doing pretty good, Conan, I must say. It's a beautiful day. And we're getting rain this season. Been incredible.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Do you want to give a quick background on who you are for those that aren't familiar with Nicole Masters?
Thanks for having me, Conan. Yeah, Nicole Masters, Integrity Soils. I'm the author of the book For the Love of Soil. I have been involved in agroecology since I finished my degree in Otago in 1999. So I call myself an agroecologist. It was a long time before I realized that there was actually a term for what I was doing, which was working in agriculture really through an ecological lens. And yeah, I'm not in New Zealand anymore, based in Montana.
That's awesome. Do you want to share a bit more about what Integrity Soils does and how you came to create that?
So Integrity Soils is an agroecological education company. We have been running workshops since 2003. So old. I think I did my first workshop on Phytophthora and mycorrhizae and carbon dynamics to avocado producers in 2003 in a shed on our property in Katikati. The team itself is quite diverse. So Megan Lannon and I are kind of like the hive mind of the organization. And then I have my brother, Jeremy Masters, who's based in New Zealand, who's just so fantastic to work with. And he comes from more of a film background, whereas Megan Lannon has just incredible work working with people, kind of more of the psychology and job services. And she's a rancher herself at Barney Creek Livestock. So they do a direct market beef with her husband, Pete Lannon. But yeah, Megan's just this phenomenal force of energy. And so we've kind of brought together some of our farming experience and ranching experience together with the organizational learning, systems thinking, and the human dynamics. And I think people come to our work and assume that most of what we do is soil, when I'd say most of our work is in the human dynamic.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the human dynamic really plays a key part of understanding yourself before you can try and understand the soil. And we're having some great conversations yesterday with a couple of Create students and Nuffield, who's over from the UK, about how it's actually working with the person first before you can open your mind to see all the possibilities within your farm.
Well, I think it's the culture in agriculture that's been ignored for a really long time. And I was studying extension science at Massey University, and I was one of 6 students that year. I mean, there was only 6 people looking at extension or communication between the farming community and science. Is like that piece has been missing for such a long time. And I also think the piece of what undermines the success of a property is your mindset. What undermines the success of a business is the leadership piece. And yeah, it's kind of been brushed under, and we've ignored the emotional side. It's like, oh yeah, we're just going to talk about practices. And you're missing the biggest part of this, which is the ability to think, I can do this, and I can observe, and I can breathe, and I'm not running on a hamster wheel of like trying to prove something to the world. It's big stuff, and it's also, I think, the most impactful stuff.
I absolutely agree. And it's probably been the same case for myself as I got into the soil, but then the most growth and the curiosity came when I started working on myself. And then that opens up a myriad of opportunities and a different way of seeing the world.
Yeah, and it's the hard stuff. I think buying a sprayer and I'm going to put some compost extract out is actually much easier than the working on yourself and working on the management piece.
Yeah, definitely. And you can kind of see that tangible result, whereas you try to tell someone that working on yourself will give you these amazing results, but it's all individual and how that comes out.
Yeah. And I think nobody likes the inference or being told, hey, you need to work on your mindset. Like, that's your biggest hurdle. Like, it's not an invitation. It doesn't, like, it's just like the terror of, I mean, we talk about the F word, which is feelings.
Yeah.
It's like, this part, like the emotional component, is actually what drives most of our management decisions. 95% of decisions that are made on farm are emotional, but we're not allowed to talk about emotions.
Yeah. I think if we look at a lot of our create group, and especially the guys, a lot of them after the first week is like, I want to work on my feelings, which is, I think, going into the start of that week, you'd never have expected that was what your outcome was going to be.
No.
No.
And I think I was surprised by, in this last Create program, so that's our agroecological coaching school, how confronting that was for some people. Like, I really was expecting them to come, especially with a lifetime of coaching that some of them had, is that they would be more nuanced in feelings. And they're like, look, I can coach other people, but I don't have that experience for myself. Like, wow.
Yeah, and that's mind blowing, isn't it? You think you
Yeah.
can coach other people on how to feel, but you can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one. So you've been running workshops all over the world, and I'm pretty interested to know what you're seeing yourself in terms of the global appetite for transformation around land management and agriculture.
Oh, gosh, I just think it's one of the most exciting times to be living on the planet and doing this work. Just for instance, I was in Queensland in February. We had 650
Oh,
ranchers, farmers coming to that event, interested in adaptive grazing. And, some of them were, pretty dyed in the wool, older generations who are like, we just can't keep farming this way. And, being in Australia and doing workshops, we had like 120 farmers and we're playing out there in the grass and getting down and like looking at dung beetles and like watching adult men play just fills my heart. But it's like, I had one guy and he must have been in his early 70s and he's like, I have not played since I was 5 years old and I feel so alive. It's like, wow, that's just awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think I was in Kenya last November and working with the three largest producers in Kenya and having them just like, we just can't keep putting this stuff on. We can't continue in this way that we've been going. One, it doesn't work financially. What are we doing to our people? We had a couple of pregnant women in the field and they had this moment of like, well, this is the list of shit that we've been putting on the fields, and here we have women that are working in those fields and are out there and sampling and touching and that just realization, like, what are we doing with food production? Yeah, one, it's confronting, and two, I think it's just opportunity. And what I love about this space is it doesn't really matter what your spiritual beliefs are, what your political beliefs are, where you've come from in the world, your context, what country, whatever. Soil health just makes sense. Getting ecosystems functioning again is just the right thing to do. And that's what I love about this is it's moving really fast because actually it's just the right thing to do.
absolutely. What do you see as the catalyst for change in a lot of the producers that you're working with? Are they ones where they're at the crisis where something has to change, or are they more just intrigued or curious about what's happening in the soil?
I mean, I think there's always a diversity, right? But 20
Mm.
years ago, a lot of the people I was coming into contact with were, I guess, becoming interested in these aspects because they were being forced to, and they might be forced to because of a health crisis or debt or, their children's health. They'd had some kind of moment that was kind of pushing them to like, no, we really have to alter what we're doing. Whereas now I'm finding people are coming from all sorts of walks of life. And one, I think, concern about resilience of systems. I think COVID gave some people a wake up call. Where is local food coming from? We're here in Montana and eastern Montana and North Dakota, South Dakota. There was no food, right? And like working with some of the reservations who literally had just like a can of like boxes of soda was the only thing that was arriving into the food banks. And it's like, here's a community that's actually producing beef. All of it's exported out of South Dakota or out in Montana, and the communities weren't able to support themselves when some of those structures fall down. So I think that's been an incredible inspiration to get people motivated. I think the climate obviously is putting pressure on everybody, whether or not you believe in anthropogenic climate change. The pressures on terms of climate and the pressures in terms of insects and pests, or pests and diseases, is really, yeah, it's putting a lot of pressure on. So I'm kind of excited about that in terms of, all right, what's it going to take to motivate people? And I think different people are motivated for different reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And this food piece around the security in food systems, it seems to be an increasing conversation as people recognize they want to get closer to the farmer and closer to the whole foods. So are you seeing any success in what's happening where you live in Western Montana? Because I love the ethos around food there and the producers.
Yeah, Montana's fascinating. I think it's fascinating as a case study. It's the reason I came here during COVID, was I knew that if I came here, no one was going to tell me what to do, which I quite appreciate. Not very good when people tell me what to do. Um, but also it's one of the least regulated, least legislated state in the world, or a state in the US anyway. And what we're seeing is incredible innovation. And I guess it comes back to this, because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to someone's forcing you to because of water quality or fertilizer use or how many cows per acre that you can run, or all of these pressures that we're seeing, methane or whatever the latest fad of trying to undermine farming looks like, is that's not happening in Montana. And what we're seeing instead is people getting together as community, which is what farmers have always, that's the foundation of farming, is community and coming together. And seeing, you guys got to meet with Cole Mannix and the old salt festival of like producers getting together, or what Megan's doing in terms of direct marketing beef. There's so many people here that are direct marketing, chicken or pork. And yeah, having an incredible, like here in Livingston, we have just one of the most amazing organic stores that's supplying produce from the local region in an area that really is a food desert. You think how short I mean, we're now what? We're nearly at the end of May, and most of my plants are like this big. It's a very, very short window of growth that we have here. Yeah, and just what we're seeing is incredible uptake. I think I've talked to you about this before, but we have, in one of the regions that I've started working with in 2013, is now over 40% of that land area being managed using adaptive grazing, biologicals on their pivots, vermiculture, all of this stuff. I mean, you're past the tipping point. The people that are weird now in these communities are the ones that aren't talking about soil health and resilience.
Yeah, it's such a great model, and it's actually really inspiring for me for what is possible. Like I look at what's happening here in Canterbury, and we're probably one of the more regulated areas in New Zealand, which stops a lot of the innovation. And I just feel like we could create the exact same ethos here, and it would solve a lot of our issues.
What blows my mind, if you think about the Canterbury example, is the carrot and stick model, which might have worked in the 1980s, doesn't work today. And it's part of why we created the Create program. Is we're training and educating people in a model that doesn't work anymore, and you're spitting them out of university in learning styles that are kind of more academic or expert driven, and then think that carrot and stick's going to work. It has never worked. You can use carrot and stick to force people to do something, but the minute you take away the stick or the carrot, that behavior will go away. And what we're looking at doing is, how do we engender internal will so that people are pulled forth through that doorway of trying something new in a way that means that they'll never go back to using the amount of nitrogen and pesticides that New Zealand's using. Yeah, and that's what I think is exciting, is what are the new models of education? What are the new models of communication? Really looking at neuroscience of change, as opposed to trying to force people to do something because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty well there. So you've got these 3-day workshops that you're doing in Australia in September and in New Zealand in August. Will these cover some of those techniques that you've just discussed?
What we will do is embed. What we know is it's not good enough just to be inspired. People need to be taking action and looking at, how does this relate to my own context? Why should I care? And what these workshops are really designed to do is, how how do you sort of sift through all the information that's being out there in the world? I mean, there's so much information. There's so much data. And you can just drown and then end up with what we call analysis paralysis of like, oh, there's all this stuff I don't know where to start. Is one, let's get started. What's something you could get started with that's zero risk as far as I'm concerned of starting to reboot the soil health of your particular operation, but also being able to know for yourself, is this working? Am I heading in the right direction? Or have I just been sold a bunch of snake oil from some slick salesman, right? Because that does exist. And what I'd like producers to really leave with is the tools to be able to assess for themselves and figure out for their context in this environment, what's the best step forward? Because every operation's different. And I think you get these experts that come in and go, "Whoa, you're just this one silver bullet's going to save, eat a third and leave a third," or whatever it is that someone comes in and says something, and that's going to save your operation. And what I liken soil health journey to is a little bit like raising a child. Is every single one of you has a different child. They're going to react differently in different circumstances, and once you think you've worked them out, they go and change again. And you're like, oh my God, I have to be adaptive. I have to keep thinking, which is what makes this whole thing hard. Is you're going to use more of your brain than what the conventional industrial farming model does, which is just kind of, they want a monoculture of the mind. Everything's just kind of, you don't have to think, just plug and play and go out and put this chemical on at this date. And what we're asking people is, let's bring back observation, let's bring back intuition, let's do the monitoring and know for yourself, am I really doing the best job that I could? And I think that's really exciting because it's empowering, right? And it's creative and it's fun. And what we're seeing is the average age of farming just kind of keeps on increasing. Whereas if you look, they did a study in Australia recently and they found the average age of regenerative farmers is 37. That's the kind of farming that we want to be doing that's going to bring the next generation back.
Absolutely. It's actually just fascinating. I like the fact that it is always adapting and you have to adapt with it. You're not just getting stuck doing the same thing over and over again. And I think that's why we see the comments from farmers who have been on the journey for, say, 10 years, that it's brought the joy back to their farming and they're excited and they're curious, and their whole family is involved in it because they see the passion behind it all. It's such an incredible thing. And I don't think people realise that they're not enjoying maybe their current farming style, and how much of an impact it is having on them until they do make a change.
Well, what I find and it's in the literature as well, is most farmers see themselves as stewards, right? We're not in the land to flog it. We're not in the land to be mean to animals. I mean, that's not why you got into farming. But there's that, we become resigned, right? And you go, okay, I have to do this, or the bank's making me do that, or and that's where the kind of joy seeps away. And what I hear from, and often it's from kids talking about their parents, saying how their parenting's changed because mum and dad aren't stressed all the time and they actually have time to have fun and go out and look at stuff and involve the kids more in a way that's not like, hey, do your chores and why haven't you done this and rah, 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 is like just that lightness of being that starts happening when we are feeling creative instead of operating from a place that's often not that fun. And not saying that the conventional farmers themselves aren't having some fun. We just know, and I see it myself and I hear it all the time. And it's also in the literature, right? In terms of increased satisfaction, increased joy, is we know that getting reconnected to your land in a deeper way brings that passion back.
Yeah, and in some of those places you walk on, you can feel the energies different to some of the other farms. But even if I look at myself, when I'm pushing myself to the limit and taking too much on, my creativity goes to almost zero and I stop listening to my gut, which is not very helpful. I get stuck in my head. And then I just feel like I can't make the correct decisions that align with where I want to go and my purpose. So it's not just farmers, it happens to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a global phenomenon, if not just in farming, but it's explained through neuroscience in terms of most farmers are in a flight or fight phase. And what's that doing to your blood flow through your body? So your body flows 5 miles less, so like 7.5 kilometers or whatever it is, 7.5 kilometers less through your body. So all those little fine capillaries, your blood stops flowing in those capillaries basically to get you into being safe, get you into run, into flight or fight. And then that affects your brain, that affects how you see, it affects your energy levels, it affects your ability to retain information. Like there's so much to it, or in terms of like, when was the last time you just lay down in the field, in the grass, and listen to your cows chewing their cud? Or you lay down in the vines and you listen to the bees and the birds. Like, how can we make those micro moments in a day to just check in?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I now have a practice that kind of grounds me when I get to a farm. It's just picking up the grass and running it through my hands and just trying to like get present with that moment rather than just going in with like a preconceived idea of how I'm going to fix everything. It's like trying to tune in with the land and then get better at trusting like that natural instinct in myself, which is obviously going to be a work on because I've gone so far away from it.
That's how we've all been trained, right? And how maybe you were brought up, or the schooling system, right? Is it trains us to fix, which is really reductionist and linear. And again, it affects the brain. It affects how we feel in that moment. So you walk out onto a property and you're in fix it mode. Suddenly your attention and your eyes become really focused, and you stop observing the broader picture, which might actually be, there's an issue here with the succession or husband and wife dynamics that's actually undermining. Those are the guys that are not making the decisions here. Like, you've got to be listening really broadly when you're working with people.
Yeah, it's definitely changed the way, well, it made me realize that I've probably missed things in the past that have been really crucial. So just taking that time when I first get to meet someone and ask the questions and just listen and actively listen instead of coming in with like, I'm just going to do this and fix it for them. That's been a really mindset shift that has brought a bit more joy and curiosity to what I do as well.
And what have you noticed with the people that you're working with? What difference has that made with them?
I think you cover so much more in terms of who they are, what they're trying to achieve, and you end up going and seeing like the whole businesses. Whereas some of my work, when it's just been environmentally focused, they just want to keep you in like that point. But I'm always very interested in the whole farm system anyway. But if I just think about one guy I've got who mills his own wheat, like he took me around the whole farm. I was there to do some land change stuff for him, but we went around the whole farm. We talked about all his practices, what his issues are, and what his reasonings behind it, and why his change was. And then he showed me through his mill and everything, and it was just, I got a much clearer picture of what his drivers were rather than just there for doing the work. So yeah, it felt like you got a deeper connection even from that first meeting, which I think is cool.
Yeah, so powerful. Yeah, and then you're going to be of better service than if you just came in and went, hey, you need to fence off this riparian zone and plant some trees, when he was like, that's not where the issue is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 visits to figure out what the actual thing that they want solved in the past. Whereas I think coming with this approach, like I got that day one, and okay, now I'm grounded in what he actually needs to achieve or his biggest issue. So I feel like I am offering a better service in that regard. So yeah, it's very powerful. So let's talk about Create. Can you walk us through what it is and how it's different from many other, I guess, coaching or educational programs in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think there's anything like it. And I'm not being an arrogant character. It's like, I mean, it's a program I would love to do. Be on the other side. And sometimes I get a little bit of envy, like, I'd love to go through this experience. So CREATE stands for Consciously Regenerating Ecosystems in Agriculture Through Transformative Experiences. And that's really what it is in a nutshell. Is we need to be learning experientially, which means you are walking through, you're having an experience, you're touching, you're feeling, you're in the zone, as opposed to, hey, Conan, I'm going to tell you about secondary metabolites and, we're going to geek out for a while. But actually, unless you can couple that to something real in the world, it doesn't mean anything. I think we've started to kind of, get all obsessed about, some of this knowledge that actually isn't contributing to action. So it's a program designed around performance and getting people in action around careers in agroecology, and that might be teaching or facilitation or coaching or consultancy. So it's for people that are like, hey, I've got this knowledge, I've been working in this agricultural space. Although we have had people that have come from like ecological spaces like conservation. We've got one at the moment who would be interesting to see. if they apply, but coming from a mining context, any kind of land
Oh.
use around rehabilitation and regeneration. And these people are wanting then to take their career up a notch, or and we've had quite a few actually who have rewritten their job description. So they might be currently working with a company, they come and do create, and then they're like, you know what? I'm worth more than this, and this is actually the job that lights me up. This aligns with my purpose and what I care about. And so what I love seeing is it really is a program that empowers people in what they love. So we had one graduate who actually ended up going and becoming like a nurse. So he actually left agriculture because he was like, actually, human health is what I really care about. And that's where he went off. And so we're like, I don't really care what you do when you do this, as long as you're doing something that lights you up. It is probably 30% of it is the technical, like agronomy, the animal health, soil health. Like we say, this is not the program to come and learn some of the basics. It might be a program where you need to round yourself off. So we've got people that maybe don't have the background in soil or agronomy. And I just say, hey, you're just going to have to do another day or two a week and really get yourself caught up to be able to not drown in this program. There's 1,000 pages of curriculum, and we look really at all these different systems, and then how do we integrate it and how do we ask better questions. So I say 30% is technical, then 30% of it is that personal development, like what's getting in my way of being successful. Do I have a story around finances? Do I have a negative story about myself? Am I feel like I'm an imposter? Do I feel like I'm not good enough? We really dispel and kind of, we blast in there on some of those things that are limiting factors on the human. And then we look at the professional development. How are you going to set up a business? How are you working with a client? How are you writing reports? Yeah, so it's a very rounded program, and that's what we wanted. Is I was trying to find consultants to hire pre-COVID, and just found there just wasn't people out there who could connect soil to plant to animal performance or what was happening in their vines, and then be able to work with people. And so we got people that were really good, maybe technical, and couldn't talk to a human being to save themselves, and it was like, okay, how do we round people out? So that's really what the program's designed for. Is we don't expect people to come with everything. We just want to be able to lift you up and round you off, and then set you off to fly, and then be interesting to see where you go.
Yeah, and I'm personally fascinated to see where everyone from my cohort ends up, 5-10 years time. There's like the possibilities are endless, and the empowerment that's come out of the program for each of them and the growth, you just know that they are capable of achieving what they want to achieve in their life now because they've got the tools.
Yeah. So what have you seen from your cohort? What's kind of woe to go, do you think, are some of the things that they've really shifted?
I think that personal piece, like that 30% of the personal development, is the really key part. You saw a lot of limiting, I think imposter syndrome probably was present in just about everyone there.
Yeah.
And just having that confidence in themselves that what they do know currently is enough to help other people. And that's like a big mindset shift, because everyone probably came in going, we will need to learn all this technical stuff that Nicole's got, and we want to get that so we can help people. But the fact that we already know so much and we already have the skills to coach and get people to where they want to head, that has been a really big shift for, I think, most of us in the group. We all were thinking that we needed to gain more knowledge to be successful and helpful to others and of value. But the value is actually us as human beings, and actually the listening ear, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, I think it keys into that topic before around, holding up experts as kind of having the answers. Is we've been trained in that model, and we're like, but I'm not an expert. And we do get some students that are know-it-alls. And admittedly, I used to be a know-it-all. Maybe I still am sometimes. And I want to apologize if I ever experted on anybody or know-it-alled on them. That's really unhelpful. Like anyone that's hung out with a know-it-all, the only one who feels good in that situation is the know-it-all. And you can't contribute new information to them. They make huge amounts of assumptions. And often, they can be really well read, but they're not so good when it comes to just sitting back and listening to others and observing and realizing that there's assumptions in there. So we invite the know-it-alls. They're often my least favorite people to coach. They're pretty hardcore. And even as clients, a know-it-all can be really challenging. Is is really what is the cost of walking through life like that is, yeah, people feel like they switch off around you. And I think sometimes it's realizing that when you're around another know-it-all, you're like, oh, it's icky.
Mm.
And yeah, and the flip side is the imposter. And actually both of them are the same sides of a similar mentality, which is that you're comparing yourself to somebody. A know-it-all thinks they're better than others, and imposter thinks they're not good enough. But both of them are comparisons, and it's like, stop comparing yourself. You are the only Conan Moynihan in the world who does what you do in the way that you do it. There's no one else like you. And the minute we can kind of give that up, and it's like comparing yourself to the neighbor. No, you can't do it. You are totally different and unique from that individual. And I find once you give up some of those conversations, it's so freeing.
I totally agree. Like everyone's got their own specific, unique experience. Even if you did the exact same life as someone else, you'd still have your own experience and how you interpret things. And there's that.
Yeah.
That's the value, and that's where people connect to. And I find myself now like being very like keyed in on the fact like I don't want to expert on people and have all the answers. It's how do I ask the curious question of that person rather than saying no, you're wrong. This is actually what I think, and this is the right way, which I think is, humans want to be right, but just figuring out what the curious question is to understand where they're coming from, because I might learn something and there's quite a high chance that I'm probably wrong.
Yeah. And then you get to learn something, and also someone else feels better after that interaction. So you both win out of that experience, and I think I shared, like, I had a horrific time last year with a blocked water pump, and then the pump would switch off. And I asked technical support. I asked every expert in the world, and I ended up getting another pump and bringing that out here. And finally, my neighbor came over, and what he did, and I really appreciated, is he didn't mansplain, because at this point, I'm about ready to rebuild these things from scratch. Like, I know how these things work. And if somebody or other tells me, have I checked the oil or has it got gas in it, I'm literally going to punch them in the throat. Like, that's the level of fury that I was in at this point. And the neighbor comes over and he says, all right, walk me through what you've already done, and let's pretend we're starting right from scratch, and let's just build it from there. And the freedom that gave me, and it's like, that's the power of really good coaching, is you don't go and assume on them. You don't go and tell them what you think the answer is now we're co-creating, and we fixed the solution. And actually, at the end of it was actually a fault with both the pumps. They had a faulty oil gauge, so it would just switch off after you got it going. So it was a little bit outside anything that anyone could have fixed anyway. But it's like, bring that inquiry and that curiosity. I'm loving this experience. I don't want to punch you at this point. And I'm like, oh, this is really good coaching. And he's just doing it naturally. I love it so much. And you see someone who's just naturally curious.
Well, that leads into my next question, because I think in farming, a lot of people aren't familiar with what coaching is unless they've had sport or a business coach. How is coaching different from the current model of, say, advice or consulting in the agricultural industry?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's true. Like, many people haven't had an experience of coaching unless maybe you've had an experience like that with the pump, because this is not, it's not sports coaching.
No.
And I think and once you've had those experiences, you appreciate it so much more than a consultant. I promise you that. So my first client in 2006 was Bruce Nimmin at Kokako Vineyards in the Hawke's Bay. And Bruce asked me to come and consult for him around soil. And I said, look, I don't know. I was terrified. I'd never done any consulting. And I'm like, I don't know anything about vines. What's going to happen? And he said, look, you don't need to know anything about vines, because I do. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, I want to learn what you know about microbiology. I want to know about the visual soil assessments and how does this interrelate. And so there was this whole knowledge exchange and walking alongside each other. And I mean, I was only a couple of steps ahead of him in terms of thinking about soil. But what we achieved in that first year was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was because he was asking questions and I was too ignorant to know what questions I should and shouldn't ask. And I just came from it from curiosity the whole time, as I probably started coaching and then went into consultancy and then came full circle back to realizing that coaching is what I want to do, which is get curious about what's happening over there and pull on that expert knowledge, which is the farmer or the rancher or the grower, is they know their own land. They know the history. They know what's been happening with weather patterns. They know that there's stuff going on, but sometimes they haven't had that soundboard to go, I wonder why. And I did that exercise with Riversun Nurseries. So they're the largest rootstock nursery in New Zealand. They do up to 5 million rootstock a year. And I asked them, why were you putting down this black, like they put down this black plastic into the vines in the rows. And then when it gets too hot, because they want it to warm it up, then they paint it white because then it cools it down. And then they've got ticker, like dripper system underneath it. And it was all really labor intensive. There was a huge amount of waste being produced. And so the question I just asked was, well, why? And they're like, well, because everyone does it. I'm like, okay. And sometimes people do things, and we've always done it that way because it was the right thing to do. But in this case, it was like, oh. So they did a whole flip in terms of what they were looking at, did some trials, and ended up saving themselves a fortune and saving themselves on all the plastic and totally reintegrating their system in a more ecological way. And it was a win-win-win for the environment and for themselves. But no one had asked that why question. And I think it's so easy to stop reflecting or soundboarding or asking that. And sometimes it's just having that partner to bounce ideas and come from like just that either curiosity or ignorance space of like, why is it that we do this thing? And someone can be like, I don't know, let me think about that. And then they come up with, actually, this is why and why I don't want to keep doing it. Like, it's so fun. It's quite addictive, isn't it, Conan?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'm getting better at it just through practice. I haven't got it mastered, but I find it fun just because you get to know so much more about the person and what they're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then hopefully on the other side, they get value out of it because it's like a new set of eyes asking them. Might be silly questions, but I'm just trying to get clarity on what they're doing. And that might be one of those questions is enough to go, actually, why am I doing this? And that can be the catalyst for change, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these coaches come with incredible expertise as well. So it's not just a series of questions, because that would be really annoying as well. If you wanted to find something out and they're just like, well, I wonder why, is eventually you're going to get frustrated too. We call it magnanimous coaching, right? Which is like, I'm going to be generous in my listening and generous in my curiosity and see what it is that you're seeing. And then, yes, there is this technical specialty that we can see or we observe, or you'd be like, this could be a bacterial infection, which could be caused by whatever, and you bring that knowledge, but it comes from more of a space of generosity rather than somebody feeling like they're stupid, because that doesn't work well in any relationship.
I totally agree. So I think if we look at someone who wants to attend, create, and all the technical side of it might seem a little bit overwhelming. Do you think the community or the connection that you create within the group helps to aid with the learning side?
Oh, absolutely. Like, we have actually had programs where we've turned away really highly qualified agronomists because we're like, actually, the cohort already has a couple of really good agronomists. We actually need, in this situation, someone that's experienced with food systems, or we need someone that's coming from vegetable production and horticulture, livestock. So it becomes a hive mind. So the idea is, this isn't, Nicole Masters has got all the answers and she knows everything. Like that would be so unhelpful. Is that actually, as a hive mind of, it's close to 30 people, because you've got the coaches as well, just extraordinary coaching team, is that within the group we can probably answer these questions. Like, why have we got trichoderma being parasitic in this situation? Is you've got a group of people then go, I can brainstorm that. I mean, we've had vets in this program before, veterinarians. Don't know if we've had a vet, but we've had veterinarians. We've had people that kind of bring, different aspects of maybe like plant science, that conservation sciences. I want a group as diverse as possible from different countries. I must say, after this last one, though, we have to have Australians every time.
Yeah.
Because, but they have a level of self-expression. I mean, I'm stereotyping, obviously, but having Australians in a program really, it helps some of the more conservative communities that I work with realize that it's just a construct, right? That community that you live in that is very constrained and quiet and polite. That's just a cultural constraint. Like you could choose to be more freely expressed. You could choose to have a laugh. You could stop worrying about, what you might look like on camera and just, ham it up. Is the diversity of self-expression, I think, is just as important in a program. And I think it's part of why this last cohort was so successful is we had 7 Australians in there.
Yeah, the Australians were definitely leaders in the group. I think the community alone, or the network that you create with the 30 people between coaches and attendees, that's worth the money in itself. Like you can solve any issues between those 30 people, and the self-expression and confidence and support you gain from each other. Like it's that old thing of finding your tribe for me. Like I found 30 other people who are wanting to achieve similar things in life and will support me in what I'm doing. And I just feel like I haven't had that before, which is apart from my partner. So it's an incredible feeling to now know that I'm supported like that.
Yeah, and I love it. There's a bunch of neuroscience in how we design a program to bring people together, which, can feel uncomfortable at times, but it's really like breaking down those barriers to what stops us feeling like we can be authentic and safe with other people, and have a laugh. It was really interesting at your graduation that we had here in Livingston we had probably 50 people at that, and those ranchers and people came up after the event to say to me, I've never met such a bunch of people that was so passionate and had so much purpose in their life and was so interesting. And I'm like, here we are with 30 incredibly passionate, purposeful, vision-filled people, and you squish them all together in a space for a week, and it is literally magic to watch unfold.
Yeah, it's been magic to be a part of, and that's a full credit to you and your team. You have enabled that to happen for all of us. And it's not like anyone was left behind. We all were in it together, and we all had that same personal growth and change. So it's just full credit that wider community that's spent 2 or 3 hours with us could see that so instantly that that growth is actually going out into the world as well.
Yeah. Well, also you can go up and talk to people, right? You can be curious about strangers. I think we've become so frightened about talking to strangers. It's like it might be one of the best conversations you have this year, and so that is one of the things I want to see is people being able to be more self-expressed and more confident. And they could be your next client. I mean, I've picked up clients in random places, on airplanes, talking to people. You got to come and see my ranch. Okay, cool. But if I was going to sit there in silence and be all weird on the plane,
I totally agree. Like since starting Create, I've ended up sitting beside and just running into people I'd never thought I'd meet before, and I'm just happy to talk away about what I'm doing and where I'm going. And fantastic thing about New Zealand farming is it's 2 degrees of separation, so they've somewhat heard that I've been on a bit of a journey or what I do. So they're intrigued about what's happening in Montana and overseas as well. So I think the curiosity about what you're doing is seeping in through all of New Zealand. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I hate it when you'd be traveling and people would be like, "Oh, do you know so and so from New Zealand?" And I really want to say no, and I'll be like, "Yes, I do know them." We're a big country, we really are. But I love that connectivity because this is what I see as possible for New Zealand is we are the 3rd highest user of fertilizers in the world, and we're second to Singapore, which I love Singapore, but doesn't really count in terms of agricultural production. It's we are just so input driven. It's mental to me. And as a consequence, we see that in water quality and food quality and nitrates in the water and all of that. And how exciting would it be if we just flicked a switch in New Zealand, use that clean green marketing that already exists out there and actually put integrity behind it and be like the world's first regenerative nation. I think there's such an ability for New Zealand to do that, but we've got to stop telling people that they're wrong. We've got to stop legislating and forcing people to do stuff. I think we also need better structural systems in New Zealand and get the FERT companies out of the way. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I totally agree. And at the moment, we're seeing proposals around some things that will actually change New Zealand's ability to even trade on that market of pure and green, which is horrifically scary. There is absolutely no connection to how it's going to work with farm production systems or how the farm is going to be profitable out of it. It's all about making money for big companies. And the people that are out there touting it, I don't think they have made the connection themselves. They've almost been part of the marketing wheel and they believe it to their core. So there's a big educational piece that needs to be undertaken in New Zealand about why this matters. Because for me, it looks like economic suicide if we go down some of these routes around GMOs or the agri-tech. But that's another whole podcast in itself, I think.
Yeah. But we are at a crossroads, and I think this is the moment to choose. Do you want to do what's right or do what kind of is coming from some political and, financial gain that's really still not going to be putting the money back into farmers' pockets? What I love about the regenerative route is it literally is putting money back into farmers' pockets. And take a look at the 1,000 Farm Initiative with Jonathan Lundgren. He's starting to publish some of the material. They're up to 1,200 ranches and farms that they've been on. And I think maybe 30% are, conventional. Don't quote me on that, but it's around that. And what they're seeing is significantly higher profitability in the regenerative space. So I'm like, if you want to do this and do this for the long term, we need to be taking care of economics as well as the environment. And I think we're seeing more and more support for that. So I just think New Zealand farmers need to get their voices out and up and not get sold this story really of GMO. There's more to what a plant can offer if we have its microbial partners. I mean, I think that conversation's far more interesting than, hey, I'm going to tinker with some genes and then you're going to have to buy my seed.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, if someone's sitting on the fence about applying for Create, what would you say to them to get them over the line?
I think everyone's here for a different reason. What is it that you care deeply about? What is the difference that you want to make in the world, and how long do you want to take to get there? We know that in the 8-month program, we can get you to a place that might take you 10 or 20 years to get to. And that's from people doing this program have reported that back to us. Like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd done this when it first came out. Like, I wish I'd just got on the plane and done it and invested in myself. It is a big investment, but I also know you'd spend less on Create than you would doing a master's, right? It's investing in something that truly is going to make a difference. 95% of graduates go and do something really powerful with this program, from, like I said, rewriting their job description, being headhunted, or starting their own business. And I think in the first year we surveyed Create students, and on average they were working with 4,500 acres in their first year of like taking on new clients. So it's one of the few programs that I know of where like we put our money where our mouth is. We know that this program is going to make a difference to you, and who knows what that difference looks like, but it's going to pay for itself. And would you agree? Well, you've only just graduated, right? So
yeah,
still working it out.
I think even after the probably first 6 weeks, I would say that I went through almost like a quantum level jump in myself. So I have the fortunate thing that my beautiful partner is already a coach, but as many people do, they don't really listen to their partners. So I knew a lot of the personal development stuff. Yeah, definitely don't coach them. But it just took the team of your coaches and yourself just to turn the key that was already in the lock, and I just like flew. And I can't really remember the person I was before, is how I describe it. I am just now this person who's confident in myself and the value that I bring to the world, which you can't put a price on that, honestly. And it's been probably the best investment I've ever made, and my partner will say exactly the same thing as well.
Your best investment you've made into her?
No, well, she'll say it's the best investment I've ever made because, it's made our relationship better. We can communicate with each other at a deeper level and have deeper, curious questions and with each other. And I can coach her when she asks to be coached as well, which she appreciates.
And I mean, how do you put a dollar value on something like that? But I think this is why the core of this program is performance. It's like, well, performance in what? Well, performance in my relationships, performance in my ability to diagnose a landscape, performance in my ability to listen to animals. Like, we talk about this program as one of the core aspects is presence. And what does presence really means? Presence means to be connected. And how we're now walking through the world like we're sleepwalking, and how often do you meet someone who's truly present with you and truly listens to you? And it's like you can count that on one hand these days. What would New Zealand look like if we were all present? And then present to what was going on in terms of GMOs or water quality, and present to like the grieving of the loss of fisheries or the grieving of the loss of birds. Is you get present and then you're like, and I'm going to take action. I'm not going to be resigned about this. And so what I love of watching Create grads is they get into action about stuff that they care about. And so if you're interested in getting into action, and stop making up excuses about why you can't, or why you can't afford to, or why you're not good enough, or all of that stuff that just keeps you small. We have one very sacred life to live. Let's live it to the full. And that's the invitation, I think, for Create.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed it there. So applications need to be in by, I think it's June the 26th from memory, around about then. But you can check out the Integrity Soils website for more information. And I think Megan's doing pre-calls with people as well if you have any questions on top of this.
And we've been doing the webinars, which you've been on, I believe, so people can ask amazing people like yourselves from around the world what their experience has been. But also it'd be lovely to see some of you in Tamahere, in Hamilton in August. Or if you're in Australia, it'd be lovely to see you up in Gympie. That 3-day workshop will give you, some incredible insights into really the indicators. What's your land really telling you? They're going to be really fun.
Yeah, I can agree. I've been to one of your 2-day ones before, and I really enjoyed it. And it was that same thing. It's that community of the people there as well. It's meeting other people who are on the journey, which is also extremely valuable. Yep. So I typically finish up my podcast with 4 quick fire questions for all my guests. The first one is, what's one thing that you would change about the agricultural industry?
For vested interests to not be the ones that are funding research. So for research to be publicly good.
Yeah, I'd love to see that as well. The second one is, looking back at your younger self, what's one piece of advice you'd give?
Trust the journey. The journey is good, even when it's hard. But the hard things were always the good things.
And lean into it.
Even the really hard ones.
There's so
lean
much
into it.
Yeah. What's something that's really exciting you at the moment?
Create Australia. Yeah, can't wait. It's watching people's applications come in, and you're like, oh, this is going to be amazing.
I bet they're going to have some pretty high caliber ones by looking at some of the people that I've talked to about it as well.
Yes.
And finally,
but I think high caliber, but sometimes if you think about, we had a very young person on this last program who blew everyone away with their coaching skills. So I think don't be intimidated or think you can't because you're young or you're old, right? Or whatever, you bring something to this conversation.
Yeah. And I've been talking to some very young people, and I consider them high caliber, while they might not think of themselves in that way. And finally, what is a force of nature to you?
Myself.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the unstoppable, there's just so many unstoppable people that I admire that are the force for nature. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you very much for hopping on today, Nicole. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again and discuss Create. You should be very proud of what you've created and the people that you're sending out into the world and the tools that you're giving them. It's certainly changed my life, and I'll be forever grateful for you, and I'll remember that probably these 8 months for the rest of my life, I imagine.
Oh, thanks, Conan. That means so much. And thank you. And I'll pass it on to the team. It's really a team effort, this program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.